What's happening, YouTube? As you might know already, we're Fujifilm X-T3 and X-T4 video shooters, and today we're going to be doing a full build of my shoulder rig. So let's get it going. What's happening, guys? So today we're going to be talking about how I build out my entire Fujifilm rig. As you may or may not know, I shoot everything on Fujifilm cameras for video production. This is the X-T3. You're watching everything on Spencer's X-T3 video rig, and then he's going to be shooting some additional B-roll footage with the X-T4 roving C-cam that we often shoot with. So if you're interested in all three of our setups and you don't need to watch me build it start to finish, you can go ahead and check the link right here to a video where we just sort of briefly discuss the three different camera styles that we use for our Fujifilm videos. But per someone's request in the comments section on our last video, somebody was interested in exactly how we build this thing out from bottom to top, and I thought it might be kind of a helpful video. Even if you don't build it the same way as I do, this might give you some ideas for how you want to build your camera out. So everything is centered around this tiny little mirrorless body. This is the Fujifilm X-T3 right here, and this is pretty much what you get out of the box, except I have already taken off the removable port cover on the left side here. Other than that, this thing's right out the box. So first thing we're gonna do is throw it in a cage. This is the Smallrig cage designed for the X-T3. Great product, really high quality. It's been put through the ringer over the last couple of years, and it's really stood up to the test of time. It adds a little bit of structural stability and a little protection for the camera itself, as well as has just a million mounting points all the way around the perimeter. So really good place to start. This is pretty much paramount to the success of the entire rig. So make sure you start with that, or one from a different brand if you find a different one. And then before we get too dug into the rest of all these parts, which, by the way, everything you see on this table is eventually going to be mounted up on my shoulder in one cohesive camera. Hard to believe actually looking at it. But before we get into all of that, I'm going to go ahead and get the dummy battery put in. The reason we run a dummy battery is Fujifilm X-T3 batteries are kind of small capacity. And once I've got this thing really built out, it's really hard to access this port here. So I'm gonna go ahead and take this guy. This is the power connector made by, I don't remember who makes this exact dummy battery. I can leave the link in the description though. Most or all of these parts will have links in the description. I'll take the time to do that so that you guys know everything that we're using here. So this is just basically 4 connector pins, a little piece of plastic to make it fit into the camera, and then it's just a power cord that goes out. And then we power everything on this entire rig by V-mount battery bricks, which is just really helpful. So now that we've got that going out, we've got one cord coming out the bottom, and that'll go into our battery plate later. But like I said, just for order of operations, that's helpful to do that first. So next we're gonna do, we're gonna try to get this thing mounted up onto a plate for a tripod, and then that'll just make this a little more stable so I can start adding everything else. So what I've done is I bought this piece. This is either from Camfade or Smallrig or some company. Again, links will be in the description for all of these. This will be called sort of the Arca Swiss riser plate is what we'll call this thing. So go ahead and check that out if you're interested in this piece. It comes just like this out of the box, except these rails are centered. But yeah, so it's got an Arca Swiss quick release plate, 2 riser plates that are height adjustable. You can raise this up and down, and then 2 15mm parallel rods, as well as a little cheese plate on the bottom to attach other things to. So I'll go ahead and attach that to the body and try to center that as best I can to where the lens will be. There we go, that looks about right. Tighten that Arca Swiss mount, which, by the way, the bottom of the Smallrig cage is Arca Swiss compatible. Very helpful. So now we've got that sitting right up there, and then the other thing that I found was by the time I have all of this mounted up, the single riser plates attaching to the tripod, it would leave it with a little more wobble than I wanted. And as you may or may not know, Spencer used to have a shoulder rig and kind of moved to a different style of video. So he had this same riser plate. So I stole these riser bars from his setup and allowed myself the additional support. So that might be sort of a somewhat expensive decision if you really wanted to do that. But unless you're building your rig fully as big as mine, I don't think you'd really need the double support. I ran it with single risers for almost a year before I finally started to find the wobble more frustrating than actually, it wasn't really affecting my video that much. It just meant I had to be a little more gentle than I wanted to be. So now what we've got here is by the time we slide the rods through there, it's just gonna be a much more stable connection and everything's just got a little more support, gives me a little more confidence, which is where all of this needs to be. So make sure that we've got this lens facing forward on the, this is just your standard Manfrotto tripod plate. And we'll just attach that. We did spend a couple bucks on an extra one of these just so that this has 2 screws going into it as well. It comes with one big, one little, but I just, at the time, didn't have a plate that was compatible with, so we bought an extra one just so that this has 2 mounting points because we like to do it that way. And I'm gonna actually give myself, I know for a fact that my battery is generally more heavy and hanging off the back of the tripod than my lens, so I'm gonna slide this one forward and give myself a little bit more clearance to push this forward. Also, I need room for my shoulder pad that'll be mounted later. So go ahead and tighten those. All right, so now we've got a tripod mountable caged X-T3. So the next thing we're probably gonna go ahead and do is get rails underneath so we can start attaching more accessories. These are just 12-inch aluminum Smallrig 15mm rails, and gonna run that through both of the riser clamps here. Make sure we've got those set up just right. So this is what I was talking about here. Once we've got the riser plate mounted, this battery can't really come out like that. That's why the dummy battery really helps out. All right, so the next thing we're gonna do is I'm gonna get an Arca rail across, not an Arca rail, a NATO rail across the top here. This is what my top handle is gonna attach to, and it just gives me some flexibility to slide it left and right. That way, when I pick it up, it's perfectly balanced and isn't hanging awkwardly out of my hand. This is another Smallrig part, and this is the 3-inch rail. Gives me some flexibility. And then because I have this here, and because I always like to have my Ninja off to the left, so when it's on my shoulder, I've got the Ninja, what I need to do is put my shotgun mic off to the right side of the camera. Unfortunately, Smallrig put the cold shoe mount on the left, so I have just one of these cheap spare cold shoes that also comes from Smallrig. You'll notice a theme throughout this video. Attach that to the top there. Now I can attach my microphone to that. And then the last thing I think I'm going to add on this before we start getting to the fun stuff is a cable clamp. So this is actually not a cable clamp designed for the X-T3. This is designed for the X-T4 cage. But what it has is it has a separate screw that attaches it to the cage, and then an independent tightening and loosening knob for the cable itself. So that way this thing stays in place even when I loosen it to take the cables out. So that's really nice. It does work on the X-T3 cage. Just all you have to do is abandon one of the 2 screws, which isn't ideal, obviously, but it's better than nothing. So take that off, get rid of the spare screw, and then attach that to the side of my cage here. Make sure that lines up with my HDMI port. I think this is a really important thing to do, the HDMI clamp. Unfortunately, when you start working with these smaller camera bodies, for size, they really have to go ahead and make use of micro HDMIs, and micro HDMI is just not a very stable connection. So having a clamp is a really good idea. It's proven to be very effective for us. Now, the next thing we're gonna go ahead and do is probably attach the top handle. This is made by Condor Blue. It has a built-in record button, which I absolutely love. And it is just a NATO rail attachment. And so it's all coming together now, I'm sure. Just single screw, tighten that down. Now we can pick the thing up right on top and carry it longer distances without too much arm fatigue. Where should we go next? I guess we'll just go ahead and throw the lens on. So we're gonna be shooting interviews this week for some commercial projects that we're working on. So I'm gonna set this up with an interview setup. So this is the Fringer EF to FX Pro adapter. that does allow you to use Canon glass. So I'm gonna go ahead and snap that on along with my Canon 70-200 2.8. That's a great lens, and its biggest drawback is its size. So you can see that just kind of sags a little bit, and we do not want that. So I'm gonna go ahead and throw a lens support on there. So tip that back. This is another Smallrig product, surprise, surprise. And you just slide that right onto the rails, and I'll slide it all the way back until it sits right under where the collar would normally be for the 70-200. And then just give it a little upward pressure. Best way I find for setting these, if you have the option, which I don't always once the full rig's built, but just lay it back like this, and then you can get your height correct, and then when you lay it back down, gravity will just nestle it right on. Tighten these to the rails. All right, so now we've got a little bit more of a sturdy connection there. I've got my big, huge lens on, but I'm noticing right now, right out of the gate, that I didn't slide my rails far enough forward. So let me just make some adjustments there. That's about right. You can make adjustments later, but I think that's just about where we want to be. So one thing that's awesome about all these Smallrig products, or actually not even just Smallrig, a lot of companies are doing this now, including Condor Blue and Camvate and a lot of these. They give you these clamps that can be pulled, spring-loaded and pulled out and rotated without tightening or loosening the screw underneath. So that way you can move these out of the way once they're tightened into place, which is brilliant. Anyone who doesn't do that, start now. Where should we go next? Let's get all these lens caps out of here. So I'm gonna go ahead and throw my Atomos Ninja 5 monitor right on. So that's gonna take this pear stone arm, which goes right onto the front here. All of these are 5/8 attachments, but all 4 of these top screws come with a 1/4-20 adapter, which is really nice. So you have a bunch of spares when you're on set if you ever need to make any changes. I'll never run out, have a nice convenient place to store them. So we've got the pear stone arm attached into place. I find the best way to tighten these is to turn it to 90, tighten the pear stone arm, clamp right down, and then just give it a pull like a wrench. There we go. Now we can go ahead and set that loosely into place somewhere around there with the tightening knob facing towards me. Ninja 5. Put that right into the top thread. So the reason I'm putting this into the top thread is so it can hang down over the top of my follow focus, which is going to be hooked up here in a second. That's very fun and rewarding. That's nice and tight, and we'll just keep that pretty high now to keep it out of the way for the rest of the build. Rather than doing batteries on top of these, again, everything on this rig is going to be powered by a single brick. So this actually comes in the package with the Ninja. This is just like the DC adapter, and it's just sort of another dummy plate, but it does come included, I think. If not, I'll have a link below and you can find where I bought it, but I think it came included. All right, so now we're going to need to run cables for that item, but why don't we save cables for a little later and just add a few more items. So next is going to be my follow focus. I know this is going to be attached. So this is the follow focus from Landpart. Really beautiful piece of machinery, and I was kind of nervous when we first got something like this. Seems like it would be fragile, but has really stood up to the test of time over the course of the last year, so no complaints there. Just slips right onto the rails. Comes with this. Whoa. That'll be solved later, don't worry. So that comes with the, this comes with the product, and that just is universal and can go onto any lens. You might have seen in other videos that we are big fans of the sort of form-fitted versions for some of our lenses, but this is a nice way to do it. Tighten that right on there. All right, and then push that in until it's flush. Gears touch, tighten that, and now you can see we can smoothly run focus. So you saw that instability issue. We're gonna solve that by doing two things. So this is the shoulder rig double handle mount that Smallrig makes. We're only gonna be using half of this, but I'll go ahead and mount that up. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take the right side off because I want my custom shoulder rig mount also from Smallrig. It's just so that it's a little further out. This arm is a little short. And then I have a custom built handle that I'll show you in just a second. So that whole right side just goes on the shelf somewhere. And then we're gonna tip this back. We're gonna build that just like so. Tighten that up. Perfect. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna nestle this handle horizontally right underneath my follow focus, so I have something to rest my hand on. Just like so. Get that nice and flat. And then now once it's up on my shoulder, I can rest my palm there and run my follow focus while stabilizing the camera, which is kind of nice. And as an added bonus, when I set it down and it's super left heavy, it stops it from tipping over, which is very nice. Again, it will be balanced once it's fully built, but for now, that's a nice thing to have. So next, we're gonna need the shoulder pad, and then we're gonna build out a whole adjustment piece as well for our sound device, as well as our battery plates. So let's do that next. So as you saw, we've used the full extent of the 12-inch rails. So what we've got is a double 15mm adapter mount here with a little bit of a rise to it, and then 8-inch rails as well. So let's attach that to the back here. Attach these to the back there. Clamp those down nice and tight. So that's nice and sturdy. We've got nice addition, 8 inches off the back there. So what we can do now is slide that. See, I did it. I slid these rails just a little too far forward. So we're gonna need to give me just a little bit of extra slack here. This is where all the details come together. Actually, slide this forward again a little. All right, so can you tighten everything? Cut that. All right, so okay, so what we've got there is we've got the shoulder pad mounted with just some standard, you know, your average 15mm rail clamps attached to the Smallrig shoulder plate, then the risers to the 8-inch rails. So now I'm sort of in this place where I can put it up on my shoulder, run my follow focus, but I need something for my hand down here to support the whole thing. So what I've done, and I've adapted this a few different ways over the years, but eventually what I did is I took a shutter release cable, I stripped the wires down, I attached it to these cheap little start-stop buttons, and then that gave me the correct input for the camera remote port on the side of the camera here. But as you know, I mentioned I have the start-stop button on the top as well. So what I've done is I've got a mini jack headphone splitter, and then I've got 3.5mm to 2.5mm adapters that I've taped to the ends of each of these triggers so that they fit into this splitter. And now what I can do is I can run two different start-stop record buttons into the one provided port here, and that again is 2.5, so we need another adapter, 3.5 to 2.5. So It's 2.5, 3.5 adapter, splitter, and then cables out to each of my record buttons. So I'm gonna go ahead and try to hook that up and nestle those cables into a comfortable location. All right, so I've got the cables sort of nestled into a place that I like, but I still need a place to attach this. And as I mentioned, this arm just wasn't quite long enough, and I like something that's a little more customizable, so I went ahead and got this length adjustable. Also from, you guessed it, Smallrig. So we're gonna go ahead and attach that, but what I don't want is to have to undo this screw every time. So what I've done is I've got one of these little guys, which is made by Condor Blue, and it's just like a quick rotating RE rosette mount. So I'll just go ahead and attach that there. All right, and then this guy goes right along the side here. And so with that, what I can do now is just flip that down when I want to shoot on the shoulder and flip it back up when I'm ready to set it down or put it on a tripod, what have you. I'm actually going to attach this slightly inverted so that it's upright once it's down in the shoulder rig position. Well, that's about the angle I'm used to using. Cable management. All right, so now what I've got here is I've got this quick shoulder rig right there. Bang. It's ready to go. And when I want to put it down on a table, that doesn't sit right, so I just need this little guy to help me fold that out of place. Make sure everything's fastened nice and tight. All right, so you can see that that side handle sort of helps balance it out a little bit. Now, not only can it not fall over right or left, but it also has enough weight on each side that it's pretty well balanced as it is. So we've got a pretty good shoulder rig right there ready to go. The only things that I'm missing now are the ability to power everything. So let's get that going next. So this is made by Indie Pro Tools. It is a V-mount smart plate. It has a USB 5 volt, 2 DC outs, and a D-tap. So we're gonna go ahead and slide that right on here. But before we do, I need to use these rails to attach my dual XLR input. This is the DXA Red. It is made by Beach Tech, and it's designed for Red cameras, but it has both a main out as well as an auxiliary out. So the auxiliary out is balanced perfectly for mirrorless and DSLR cameras. It's got one big cold shoe across the top. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take one of these little dummy cold shoes, slide that, get this out of your way for a sec. Slide that right into the top here, tighten that down, and then I've got one of these little Smallrig rail clamps. Spin that right on and tighten that. Needs to be right like there. All right, so now we've got a rail mountable XLR interface, which is really nice. That slides right in here. Make sure we get it to the right distance. Tighten that down. Now the rails are free and I can go ahead and put this battery plate on. And I keep this pretty far back so that I've got some weight behind me on my shoulder. Just helps balance the camera up on my shoulder a little better. Excellent. Now, we need to run power to all these things before we get the battery on. So this is a D-tap to DC barrel port. So we can attach that right to there. And that. Excellent. That powers that. I'm going to use a USB to micro USB to power from the plate to my little XLR inputs. And that's a 5-volt amount of power, which gives you enough to run the preamp as well as provide phantom power to 2 XLR mics, which is great. There. This is the 12-volt dummy battery barrel port that's just going to plug in here. So now the camera has power, the Ninja has power, my audio interface has power, and everything else is manually controlled. So this is just your standard 3.5mm aux cord that's going to connect the preamp, XLR preamp, to the Fujifilm. Next, we're going to attach our audio. So I'm running the Sennheiser MKE 600 shotgun. It does have a little AA battery built into it. So if I ever need to run this on a smaller rig, it can provide its own power, but I hate dealing with AA's. So the fact that I can do phantom power into this is really nice. So we'll just... That's good. Snap that into place. Got one of these nice lightweight thin XLR cords. And the only thing left to do is connect the Ninja to my camera. And these are kind of a hassle sometimes, but I've just got some of these like little cable Velcros. I find them really helpful for just keeping cords out of the way. Obviously, like I said, kind of a pain to deal with when you're building, but it just so nice to keep everything neat and tidy in your final rig. And this is pretty much where my camera always lives, is just built onto this rig. So once it's built, I don't do this very often. You can probably see a few mistakes that I've made throughout, and that's because, yeah, this is pretty much always built for me. There we go. So we can go ahead and slap one of these V-mount batteries on, power up. There's a little power switch on that. Power each of the 3 devices. And we're ready to rock. Just need a little cartridge into this guy. And I've got 2 SD cards in there, so I can record internal and external recording with the Ninja. That way you got a little bit of redundancy backup, and this is the whole thing right there. So ready to start recording. Well guys, I hope you found that helpful. For some of you, this was probably a pretty dry and boring video. But for anyone who's trying to get into some more serious video productions with their Fujifilm cameras, building out something like this and having it be very modular to match your needs is a really nice thing to be able to do. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, leave them down below. Again, links to all of this is in the description. It's also worth noting, we are not sponsored in any way, shape, or form. We're not affiliated with any of these companies. Nobody has asked us to do any of these reviews or discuss any of their parts. So we're completely free to talk about any and all of this stuff, and it will just be our honest and genuine opinion. Yeah, we really hope you guys are enjoying the channel. We're trying to do as much as we can. Of course, we've been really busy this year, but we're going to try to make more time for our YouTube channel. So if you have any more requests for videos, let us know down below. Make sure you like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.